Welcome back. In today's Power Table, we are looking at fast fashion. A trend that's made keeping up with the Kardashians or the Carters a lot easier, given how quickly manufacturers are able to reproduce celebrity and catwalk garments to consumers at prices that are deemed more affordable. But also, is fast fashion having dire consequences on the economy, with most jobs in the sector consisting of cheap labor working in sweatshops? It's also a big threat to the planet, with the mass production of clothing and chemicals used in some textiles, making the industry the second largest polluter after oil. So is fast fashion a market disruptor for South Africa's economy, and does it need to slow down? I am joined by Palesa Mokubung, the founder and creative director of Mantsho, and Caddy Smith, founder and chair of the Free State Fashion Council, Jackie May, founder and editor of TWYG, and Eustace Mashimbye, the proudly South African Chief Executive Officer. To all of you in studio, good afternoon, and also to our online guests. And I actually want to start off with our online guests. And Jackie, I wanted to get your perspective on this. You have been covering this industry for quite a long time, and I'd like your take on the disruption that fast fashion has brought, not only to the South African economy, but the entire world, as it were. Has that disruption, in your view, been for the good or for the worse?
Thank you. It's good to be here to discuss something that I feel very passionate about. So fast fashion is a very lucrative industry for very, very few people. Some of the richest, well, fashion, there's fast fashion with high prices, which is the luxury brands. And then there's fast fashion with low prices. All of these brands are producing high volumes of clothes, and the people behind these big organizations are incredibly wealthy, some of the wealthiest people in the world, some of them top the richest list, regularly. What it's done it's over the years, over the centuries, fashion has been a way of industrializing. It was part of the big industrial revolution of the 1800s in Britain. The Asian tigers in the East used fashion to become richer nations. And even here in South Africa, we're seeing our retailers using the same fast fashion model to try and create jobs and grow the economy. When we talk about imported fast fashion, which is when brands are selling clothes that are made outside of South Africa, that's where we're getting competition with our local brands and our local jobs. So I think it's a very complicated and it's very complex. There's not a one answer to any questions about this space. There's so many other, we're talking about there's also the fast fashion system, but there are lots of other fashion systems in Africa and in South Africa. We've got thrifting, we've got secondhand, we've got the designer market, which is so exciting in South Africa, that we mostly at TWYG, we're very excited about the slow fashion brands in South Africa. We're also very excited about the recycling of secondhand clothing and the thrift market and the rental and the swapping. And these are all really very sustainable ways of using and engaging with fashion. But there's also, we're also very keen on jobs being created, which is what our retailers and our manufacturers of local clothing are trying to do. And the master plan, which is a plan that the government and a whole lot of retailers have agreed upon, is to try and create 330,000 new jobs by 2030. And to achieve that, they want to increase the localization of clothes, so producing more clothes in South Africa rather than importing them from factories and manufacturers in other countries.
All right. Palesa, is it as complicated for you in terms of the impact that fast fashion has had on the economy, but more specifically your business? Because I'd reckon that it has accelerated a lot more in the past decade. I mean, maybe 5 or more than that years ago, we're talking about H&M and Zara and the disruption that they were causing to the South African market. Now we're talking the likes of Shein and AliExpress and the like. Has the acceleration of fast fashion here been a disruptor for the good or for the bad of your business?
I mean, I think that my business, Mantsho, has gained or stands to gain from both worlds. We did a global collaboration with H&M. We produced some of the collection in SA and all over the world. And I'm always of the notion that wherever we can, create jobs is really good, be it here or anywhere else in the world. People need to eat.
Sure.
This is a business that's run by people. It doesn't matter where in the world, and that's just how I operate. But I also know that I have the opportunity to not even compete with fast fashion, because what I do is so authentic. And you cannot compete with someone who really just designs from the heart and does everything from the heart. I mean, you can if, from a, conceptual, on the bigger scale of things. But my business is less than 20 years old, which is a baby. It's a baby business.
Sure.
I got into a relationship with H&M, and they have hundreds of years in the industry. And I'm 17 years old, so I'm not even a teenager in the fashion industry terms. So I am still in the stage of harnessing. Yes, the brand has done a lot, but there's a lot more that we can do. And we create slow fashion, we create focused fashion, we create.
What's slow fashion?
Slow fashion is, for me, is design that takes time to produce, and quality takes time to produce. Good design and a product that is 100% world-class South African product. 100% world-class South African product takes a while to produce. And it takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of manpower, a lot of technique, a lot of care. And it starts from creating your own prints, to then choosing the base fabric to print the fabric on, and then choosing the right manufacturer to create the print, and then to getting a pattern created, and then it's a chain on its own. So I need to choose the chains that, or rather the chains that I want to kind of battle with.
Sure.
And I choose to produce slow fashion that is focused. Yes, it is more directed at the affluent, I would say, and the more the wealthy client, and the one who travels, and even under the the circumstances that we find ourselves in economically, they still travel, they still buy, they still explore, and that's the balance that I think we need to just achieve in-house. We are already doing slow fashion, which is focused, it's beautiful, it's luxurious, but we're also trying to balance it with your T-shirts. And I know that, saying a T-shirt is such a heavy thing to say, because just to create one T-shirt, you can pollute so much.
Sure.
Yeah. Just one T-shirt.
Yeah.
Causes great pollution.
Yeah, the chemicals, and depending on the kind of textiles that you're using
I'm sticking with my slow fashion, and then treading lightly into the fast fashion, because it is also a specialized field. So I'm choosing my battles.
Sure.
And I have been affected good and negatively, but I'm here to stay, and the brand is a conscious brand, so we're just going to stay there.
All right, and as you said, it has given rise to partnerships with dinosaurs, perhaps in the industry that perhaps would not have been possible a couple of years ago. Candy, just your take here, because I mean, essentially fast fashion has enabled a lot of consumers to perhaps see some of the items that are run at the Fashion Week that you are a part of, see some of these items essentially in their closets at a more affordable price. And is that a good thing for you, or perhaps is it not so great?
I think it's very important to keep that section of fashion, for an example, fashion shows, exhibitions, and all of that, because fashion contributes around a third to the GDP of our country, and if we not going to focus on that, creating a lot of jobs by giving designers, and especially local designers, the opportunity to showcase their product, showcase their talent, and parallel to them showcasing is also to bring an element of education. And I think
I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to jump in and interject and see if I can get you there on a better line. We really want to hear what you have to say, Candy. So let's get the tech team to do their work. Eustace, to bring you in, because Jackie spoke about the master plan right now that is very important in giving rise to the comeback of our textile industry, as it were, and also giving rise to a lot more South Africans buying things locally that they can afford, being the qualifier. So just tell us the work that you guys are doing as Proudly South Africa.
So we are a big part of the master plan, and our role as Proudly South African, we are the national buy local campaign. So the role of Proudly South African is to advocate for the buying of locally made products. So what we do as part of making sure that the master plan works is to stimulate demand from anyone who makes a purchasing decision. So in this instance, because this master plan is retail specific, it's targeted at consumers. So our role is to get consumers to understand the economic impact of their purchasing decisions, to understand that if they choose a garment that is made in South Africa, which we are seeing a lot of. I mean, there are a lot of units that are coming out of South Africa as a result of the master plan, as a result of the drive made by these retailers who are signatories to the master plan to say it's still the same item that you're buying, still the same brand, same quality. The difference is that the order is placed in South Africa, in a South African factory, as opposed to the order being placed in a foreign factory. And so the role of Palesa Mokubung is to educate consumers, to say choose items that have the label that says made in South Africa, because that way you're creating jobs. You know,
as she said, but I think that a lot more South Africans, I mean, I would love to buy a lot more local stuff than I currently am buying. But the issue also sometimes comes with the price point. I mean, you're no stranger to what is going on in the economy right now, and you're also no stranger to knowing that a lot of the stuff that is imported, because of all sorts of protection and favorable duties that those countries have for their textile industry, turns up being a lot cheaper, even when they are shipped, and freight rate costs and all of that are accounted to here in South Africa. So how are you balancing that, the aspect of affordability in buying local?
In fact, there's a good example of someone who's clear in terms of who she's targeting. So it's about which segment of the market you're targeting. I mean, we have seen that because of the large orders being placed in South Africa, South African factories are now able to compete. Economics taught us, economies of scale kick in. Your input costs are affected based on the large number of orders that are being placed by the retailers with the different factories. And so South African factories or South African retailers that are offering these products are able to offer them at more or less the same prices that they would offer them when imported from outside of South Africa. So it's about who are you targeting?
Sure. Palesa told us that you target the more affluent consumer. I did look on your website and you've got some wonderful things, but times are pretty tough for some of those prices that shall not be mentioned. But is there an opportunity for you to do what you're doing and perhaps also appeal to the mass market?
I am a businesswoman at the end of the day. Sure. There are items in the store that start from your 500. There's a t-shirt is 500 Rand. Someone came in and bought something for 1,000 and then 3,000 and then upwards it goes. So I am a businesswoman at the end of the day. That's why I was able to collaborate on the scale that I did. It's because, my partners realized that I'm well aware of all markets. And I'm a businesswoman first. So you do have to be aware of your market, but you have to be open-minded. But the market that you serve, you've got to serve really well, because it is an investment, that they're making. And they're buying, people are not buying out of, I just want to support you. They really believe in what we do. Designers have proven themselves in South Africa. The industry is older now. South African Fashion Week, the SA Fashion Week is going to its 30 years, I'm sure. It's well over 20 years. We've proven ourselves as designers, as credible, artists and business people. So people know what they're paying for. Okay. And because, they work hard for their money. And you said the economy is hard. So you've got to buy something that that your children will one day get to enjoy.
Sure. Quality is king, it would seem. Candy, I believe that we do have you back on a better line. I mean, we have received all the interventions so far about the disruption that has been fast fashion, and the reception so far it's brought some good and it has brought a little bit of bad. Perhaps just to pick up where you left off, and also maybe your 2 cents as to what sustainable fashion looks like, both from the point of view on what it looks like for the environment, but also what it looks like for consumers' pockets.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to try. The network is quite bad this side, but I think that it's very important for us to actually grow, especially local designers. And we're doing it quite well through the Free State Fashion Week, and also making sure that we give them a lot of knowledge and skills through training the local designers, because for fashion contributes a third of the GDP of the country, which makes that an opportunity for local fashion designers to grow into the more bigger fashion designers like Palesa Mokubung, for an example. For me, to keep this sustainable throughout, as I said, a lot of the designers has basically worked with the Free State Fashion Week through fashion shows, through all of that. So I think it's very important to keep them, to keep giving them the opportunity, etc., and also making sure that they work with the likes of Palesa Mokubung and top designers, which we've done successfully throughout. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. And perhaps maybe to also bring Jackie in to pick up on some of the points that she made earlier. I mean, Jackie, you were talking about thrift stores and the opportunities that those were bringing, the recycling of clothing and the opportunities thereof. I read an article recently in Forbes Africa talking about fast fashion and how it had created an overpopulation, as it were, of second-hand clothing being essentially dumped on the continents. I mean, the situation being so dire in Ghana that when fishermen go out and fish, they catch less fish and more clothes. So just your take on the second-hand market, as it were. It is providing opportunities for retailers, but how fast fashion can perhaps better be regulated to curb this over-dumping of clothing in Africa's retail market?
Yeah, I think it's really a symptom of the overproduction and hyperconsumption that's associated with fast fashion. And the faster the countries in the global north are given a responsibility to take care of the end of use of clothing, the better for the African continent, because at the moment we're treated as a landfill, as a dumping site for excess. And it's not only a social problem. I mean, it creates challenges and it creates opportunities. We've seen the most amazing examples of circular design and circular economy happening in those areas where that clothing ends up in. South Africa doesn't have the extent of the problem because we have regulations against importing of secondhand clothing. But in other countries like Kenya and Uganda and Ghana, which is what you gave as an example, the number of clothing that is going into those countries is just incredible, and it's creating a huge waste problem. But I think, in South Africa, we're seeing, the clothing that, the sort of reuse and the swapping and thrifting of clothing is often the clothes that we buy here. So it's not necessarily the clothes that are imported or exported from other countries. So I run a swap shop, for instance, and a lot of the brands that we swapping in that swap shop is Woolworths clothing, Mr. Price, clothes that are available here. We get H&M. We are getting Shein. We're seeing Shein clothes come into the swap. But most of the clothes are local brands, local retailer brands. There's just a point I'd like to make about the fashion. We're talking about fashion, and, it's not only fashion design and the fashion clothes that are part of the system. I think there's so many wonderful opportunities and other points of the value chain to look at in terms of sustainability. South Africa has the most incredible fiber production. We produce some of the best mohair and wool in the world. We also have a cotton industry. We need the clothes that fabric is beneficiated, but not to the extent that we would like to, because if more of that happened in the country, we'd be able to create more jobs. So there are so many more opportunities for South Africa and Africa around job creation that doesn't necessarily involve the production of fast fashion. And I think the sooner we open up that space to include points in the value chain other points of the value chain, I think the healthier for the fashion system, and that really excites me. It's looking at the fashion system in a holistic way, and at all the other opportunities that we have. I mean, the work that Palesa does is absolutely incredible, and it's very sexy and it's wonderful. But the people who are herding the sheep to regenerate the soil in parts of our country where not much else can happen in terms of agriculture, those are also fashion heroes, and those are jobs that can be created. And the more of that we see, the better for the soil. And the more that we make the natural fibers something to want people to buy, the better too. And I believe that we create heroes. The more heroes we create across the value chain, the better.
Sure. I think that for most people, when you talk about beneficiation of the likes of wool, for instance, I think a brand that pops to mind for most people is it's Mantsho, and I believe that his product is pretty well exported and it is received across the world. But I want to talk about more beneficiation then, and also this increased localization strategy. We've got the world all over doing this and across sectors, I mean, even beyond fashion. But what we've also seen is retaliation. And I want to know what you're seeing in that front as it does pertain to retail. So yes, you've got the likes of, I think, Mr. Price also committing to increase a lot more, TFG, the Foschini Group. But what about retaliation? Is that a big risk for your industry, just taking away from the lunch that other countries used to eat as a result of making our goods, or isn't it?
Not really. In fact, what we are seeing is the dumping. What we are seeing is that which would have legitimately come to South Africa is now dumped in the country, and that's the only battle we're having, and that's why we're working very closely with SARS. There's an industry forum that has been set up to look into this specifically, and all the stakeholders that are involved in those different value chains meet on a quarterly basis with SARS to see how to tackle that, because ultimately the biggest winners are those factory workers. Sure. I mean, there are a lot of factories that had put their people on short time. There are a lot of factories that had lost some of the capacity that they had built up over the years. And with these retail giants now saying, in response to this need for fast fashion and in line with what they've committed to in the different master plans, because it's not just for this industry that there's a master plan, we are seeing that the benefits are accruing to those factories. And the biggest thing for us is to try and alleviate the huge unemployment problem that we have as a country.
Yeah. So just, Palesa, perhaps even a parting shot for you. You produce locally. How closely do you look at the garments, the chemicals that go into your garments? Are they sustainable? Are you aware of the textile sustainability factor there? And to what degree is it a problem? I mean, I'm hearing the fact that the fashion industry and some of the garments, the chemicals that end up in water in other parts of the world, bringing or making the fashion industry the largest polluter outside of oil. And just, I suppose it's a question around accountability as a local designer yourself in terms of sustainability and what the likes of yourselves and your peers in the industry could do when it does come to the sustainability of the textiles that are used in your garments.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me really sad. It's such an important question and such a valuable point. And I think that we all can be a little bit more, responsible about that. But sustainability, is a big word. It's a big word. It's a big responsibility. Your biggest, I think everyone's biggest, responsibility is to get food on the table. And that's what you're going to make sure first, that you feed your staff and you feed before you worry about anything else. And it's a word that's just been introduced in the fashion industry, just in the last maybe decade.
Sure.
So it's something that we're slowly, working towards. We have a project at the beginning of each year where we take all our offcuts and leftover garments. Like I said, 17 years in the industry. I've created a lot of collections. You can imagine what my storeroom looks like. There's a lot of fabric. There's a lot of fabric. There's a lot of fabric. There's a lot of clothes. So we take them and we cut them up and we create we reimagine a fabric, made out of past fabrics from the year. And sometimes we end up with like a 50-meter piece or a 20-meter piece, and then we take that and we cover perhaps a reupholster a couch, or we do try to I guess, produce less waste.
Sure.
And then we also have women who come over to the studio every now and then to pick up a load of fabrics that they can use to make little garments for their kids. So we are conscious of it, but it's on a very small scale. And I think that's where it starts. I think it's something. It's a big concept.
Sure.
So we're doing the best that we can.
No, definitely. Like the old adage goes, you eat an elephant in bite-sized pieces. So never discount the interventions of small steps. But we'll leave it there then. And that wraps up our pile table on the fast fashion and the consensus seeming that it has brought about its disruptors in terms of the displacement of perhaps some jobs. But it looks like it's also brought about some positives in terms of the partnerships that have accrued between some of the large players and small-scale players, and government policy certainly working towards increasing the level of localization. But I'm saying goodbye to Palesa Mokubung. She's the founder and creative director of Mantsho, as well as Candy Smith, the founder and chair of the Free State Fashion Council, Jackie May, founder and editor at TWYG, as well as Eustace Mashimbye, the CEO of Proudly South Africa. And that also wraps up the show for today. Thanks so much for watching. Power Lunch West Africa is up next.